Breaking news today, Putin won't survive NATO's commitments to Ukraine, Blinken. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was quoted by CNN as saying on July 14 that NATO's long-term commitments to Kyiv at the recent summit in Vilnius prove that Russian dictator Vladimir Putin will not be able to outlast Ukraine. According to the secretary, the best way to disabuse Vladimir Putin of the idea that he could somehow outlast Ukraine and the dozens of countries that are supporting Ukraine is for NATO countries to make clear their commitment to Ukraine. According to Blinken, Putin will keep going as long as he has faith that he will ultimately win. He needs to have that idea taken away from him. The best way to do so would be to make these long-term commitments to Ukraine's security, economy, and humanitarian aid. He added that no indications have been seen in the West that Moscow is ready to end the war. Also see, South Africa's president says the BRICS summit will focus on Russia's war in Ukraine. The NATO summit was held on July 11–12 in Vilnius, Lithuania. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and delegates from Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Australia, Ukraine, and Sweden attended. Ukraine will be invited to join NATO once all member countries give their consent and the necessary conditions are met, as stated in a joint communiqué issued by NATO countries on July 11. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said that Ukraine can forego completing the membership action plan, essentially paving the way for Kyiv to join the defensive alliance through a streamlined process. Zelensky predicted that Ukraine would be invited to join NATO after the war on July 12. The G7 leaders have announced a new set of security guarantees for Ukraine, with a particular emphasis on providing the Ukrainian military with the means to deter any future aggression from Russia. The Defense Ministry of Belarus claims that Russian soldiers from the Wagner mercenary group are training local troops. The Ministry of Defense of Belarus released a video showing Wagner fighters training Belarusian troops at a military range near Osipovichi, which is located roughly 90 kilometers, 56 miles, from the capital city of Minsk. Wagner fighters acted as instructors in a number of military disciplines, it was stated. On June 23 and 24, Wagner and his group seized the southern Russian city of Rostov and marched towards Moscow, shooting down military helicopters and killing their pilots before reaching an agreement with Vladimir Putin's ally, Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin is suspected of having surrendered his troops and agreed to relocate to Belarus in exchange for Russia dropping mutiny charges against him. A new commander with the codename, Sedoy, or Grey Hair, was offered to the Wagner forces by Mr. Putin, who hoped they would continue the fight. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has stated that Russia is using all of its available resources to prevent advances by Kyiv's forces in the country's east and south. According to the Belarusian Defense Ministry, Russian Wagner mercenary group fighters are currently training Belarusian soldiers. Wagner fighters trained Belarusian soldiers at a military range near the town of Osipovichi, located about 90 kilometers, 56 miles, southeast of the capital Minsk, according to a video released by the ministry. According to the Belarusian Defense Ministry, Wagner fighters acted as instructors in a number of military disciplines. On June 23 and 24, Wagner led a brief armed mutiny that was ended with the help of Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. The group seized control of the southern Russian city of Rostov and marched towards Moscow, shooting down several military helicopters and killing their pilots along the way. Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin agreed to disband his mercenaries and relocate to Belarus in exchange for the dismissal of mutiny charges against him in Russia.